Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Manisi, and I am the Curriculum and Diversity Officer for the Nelson Mandela chapter. We are excited to have such a diversity of participants breaking geographic boundaries. It has been eloquently said several times that water is the source of life. Unfortunately, throughout decades, several countries have faced several issues in regard to the water crisis, both due to climate change and mismanagement of system. This has made a water crisis the critical issue of note globally, as we've seen in countries such as the United States of America and in our own doorsteps here in the Eastern Cape and across our provincial lines in the Western Cape. Indeed, in 2015, the United Nations General Assembly amplified this issue within the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, several questions of whether progress exists or not arises, given the recent water crisis in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipalities and many communities which remain impoverished. As REFA, we are conscious about these issues and identify the problem both as arising from ecological and socioeconomic issues today. And so today we are joined by our two speakers, Dr. Mahed and Prof. Mishi. I'd like to read the bio of Dr. Mahed first. Dr. Mahed has served in the technical panels in South Africa to help with water research projects focused on sustainable development. At the Water Research Commission of South Africa, for example, he was involved in a pilot project related to geothermal energy. He also occupies voluntary executive and non-executive board positions at various companies and NGOs. He was voted one of the brightest young minds in South Africa in the year of 2010, Mail and Guardian Top 200 Young South Africans to Take to Lunch for 2011, and a World Islamic Economic Forum Global Young Fellow in 2013. He recently received the Nelson Mandela Alumni Society Rising Star Award in 2017 and was also admitted to the Royal Society of South Africa. Our second speaker, Prof. Mishi. Prof. Mishi is a senior researcher whose focus is in applied economics, behavioral and experimental economics, industrial organization, institutional economics, and finance. He has worked on several socioeconomic issues with recent work on behavioral approaches to the reduction of water usage and prioritization, and part of the experts within the Water Crisis War Room at the South African Local Government Association Council of Speakers for Eastern Cape and the Department of Water and Sanitation. He was awarded the Competitive Mandela Rhodes Scholarship in 2010 and continued to be the trailblazer in economic policy and research, having been invited to several distinct positions and grants. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to hand over to our speakers. Our first speaker for the day is Dr. Mahed, and our second speaker to be Prof. Mishi. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sishka. Thanks for having us. With that said, essentially, I think you've sort of given us a nice background in terms of telling us, look, this is a problem that's been coming on for some time. So if we take a few steps back and we look at this, and I like the topic because I read a bit about this pluralistic lens. I'm not going to lie, I'm no expert on these economic terms, but fundamentally, South Africa, I mean, over the years, it's always been a case of trying to meet the demand by increasing supply. And this is a problem that we've ran into because of the fact that we're a water scarce country. Not many people know that. I mean, the fact of the matter remains that along our coasts, yes, we receive a substantial amount of rainfall, but once you go over the mountains and into the Karoo, in many cases, the rainfall is so low, and many of these societies or communities are completely reliant upon groundwater, and that's a critical resource, and it's become an important one in recent times due to the drought. But if we go back into time, we can see that the government, South African government, was very much aware of this issue in terms of us being a water scarce country. And while in line with that, there's been what is known as interbasin transfer schemes, whereby we see that a good example is something known as the Lesotho Highlands project, one of the largest constructed dams in Southern Africa, known as the Katsi Dam. And that water supply project, in essence, pipes water from Lesotho, which is a watershed, and the water collects there and spills down to the dams, and then it's transferred or piped into the Gauteng region. And a large amount of water for that region in particular comes from the Lesotho Highlands project, and they're currently expanding, I think, into stage 4 by now. But similarly for Port Elizabeth, and we bring it back home here, we also receive a substantial amount of water from the Gariep Dam on an interbasin transfer scheme, which goes all the way to the Nooitgedag scheme. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Nooitgedag scheme was divided essentially into about 4 phases, each phase producing approximately 70 million liters per day. And phase 3 was just completed, and it planned that phase 4 should also come online in the next few years. And that would be an extra 70 million liters. So the background in terms of how we got to this point, I mean, as a country, obviously, I mean, we can go into the politics and argue about the economics, and then my colleague, Professor, will most probably cover those aspects. But from a technical perspective, fundamentally, the long-term strategic planning for integrated water resource management has been missing. And that includes maintenance. Now, if you want to look at it from the perspective of success stories, if you will, and we are currently in a situation whereby day 0 might be around the corner. And not too long ago, Cape Town was in the same situation. But what did they do? And if we look at Cape Town as a case study, from a financial perspective, they went to RMB. They took out one of the first green bonds in Africa, quite a large one, R1 billion, and they cut that bond up. And they allocated a substantial amount into basically 4 sections. A quarter was for groundwater and groundwater development. Another quarter for desalination, to obviously now recycle seawater and try and make it potable in some way. Another quarter for pressure, and one other quarter in order to look at maintenance and sort of long-term improvements within the system. And that last point right there, which is the maintenance of our water reticulation and supply systems, is most probably one of the biggest sectors or sections that we as a country, I could say, is lagging in. And I say this with the utmost respect, obviously, to some of the technical experts working in different fields. But over the past maybe 15 years, I've myself and other colleagues and different professionals from all parts of the world actually have traversed this country. I mean, right across the Karoo, Johannesburg to Cape Town, everything in between. And because of the nature of our work and some of the consulting work that we do and some of the advisory work that we play a role in and so forth, you start quickly realizing that that maintenance component or aspect, unfortunately, has been neglected. I mean, we're hearing stories of so many municipalities where funds are being siphoned off. People are taking money and, you know, money's going missing. And in many cases, it's actually that maintenance component, that funds which have been allocated for maintenance. Because the problem is in some municipalities, you will find that in certain sectors, water is priced on a tiered system. So some people that are using much, much more water, sometimes they're paying less per kiloliter, but they're consuming more. Granted, it's for job creation. But I think the mentality of using water as an income generator needs to sort of be revisited. So that maintenance aspect whereby the funds aren't being used for the long-term maintenance, repair, and replacement of facilities is now catching up with us. I mean, 30 years into freedom as a country. I mean, we visited so many power, wastewater treatment works and water treatment works that are in a sad state of affairs, some of them needing millions, if not hundreds of millions in order for them to be either refurbished or revamped or completely replaced. I mean, a good example is one here just outside of East London. We visited a couple of months ago, and you find that it's a scenario or a case of these pieces of infrastructure that are critical for water supply are being held together literally like with, I mean, to use a better term, spit and glue. And I mentioned that to one of the engineers and he laughed at me and he said, oh, I'm glad that you can see that's happening. So that issue of an expanding population, trying to supply that population with potable water supply is also part of the issue because of the fact that we are a water-stressed country. But if one goes here into the Eastern Cape, further east into places like Ujutshwa and Mthatha, you find that the problems exacerbated by the fact that many homes are located in distant locations from the town. So to connect the water supply up to those homes also becomes problematic. So it's also an infrastructure issue. But in essence, to the point related to the topic, how we got to this point, I wouldn't say it's a perfect storm, but it's a combination of those issues around maintenance and obviously upgrades and infrastructure, but also climate change. I mean, we're not going to now just blame everything on the government, let's be honest, because of the fact that dwindling rainfall in certain regions has had an impact on certain watersheds, right? And that's become a problem. Now, in turn, because of that, what we're finding now is, and particularly here in the Summerstrand area, I spoke to one of the engineers at the city not too long ago, and he was telling me that in Summerstrand alone, there are almost 1,000 wells, if not more. Those are only the registered ones with the municipality. So you can imagine, I mean, we did a study of this nature in Cape Town a couple of years ago, where you do like kind of a back of the matchbox calculation. And you're talking hundreds of thousands of liters being abstracted from the aquifer, which is the saturated geological unit in the underground. Hundreds of thousands of liters being taken out every week. So, you know, this unsustainable practice needs to lead us to a point whereby we need to start understanding that we are unable to meet the demand with the current supply. We need to manage the demand in a more effective manner, right? Find tools that allow us, you know, like micro sprinklers for irrigation, these micro sprayers at the end of taps, and catching JoJo, setting up the JoJo tanks to catch rainfall water, and complementing the current supply. Because at the current trajectory, it seems to me that the taps, you know, knock on wood, might run dry not too long from now. The only thing that's basically pushing it back on a regular basis is actually this rainfall that's been coming through on, you know, on and off. But other than that, we see that there's a big problem. And this, I like the title of our meeting here, from a pluralistic approach, because the fact that people like gift of the givers are now coming in and helping to drill boreholes. And us as a university, we've taken a stance. We've come to the fore, and we've decided to look at strategies in terms of how do we better manage our water resources? Can we create injection schemes to inject water into the groundwater to help, you know, save the aquifer and obviously help sustainable supply for ourselves? So a pluralistic approach is critical in terms of how do we, you know, ensure that we're able to have sustainable supply in the long term. And I think that's fundamentally sort of the technical aspects of the issues that we're facing. Thank you, Isishle. Thank you, David.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much, Doc. So for now, I think I'll go straight to Prof, and then we'll do sort of like a package Q&A. So can I just ask Prof to come in?
All right. Can you hear me, David?
Yes, I can. Again, Prof. Can I just ask? Okay, let me just ensure that Prof is spotlighted.
I have my slide on the screen. I'm not very sure if you can see.
Yes. Okay. Let me.
You can see.
On my side, I can see it, Prof. Your slides.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it too, Doc.
Okay. I just want to see why is it not moving here. Okay. All right. Yes, I can.
Did I just?
Yes. Okay.
Can everyone see the slides?
On my side, yes. I'm not sure about the participants, but I can see the slides.
So should I proceed?
Yeah, you can proceed, Prof.
All right. No, thank you so much. I think Dr. Ed, you really made interesting kind of points there. So one way or the other is that we need to manage our demand, and there are different ways that demand can be really managed. And I want to look at the softer side of things. There are different ways demand can be managed, but I want to make sort of a proposal or a highlight of the other area that is not often looked at, but that is also very much critical in managing demand. And I think it resonates then with the theme as well that we have towards a pluralistic lens on the crisis. The traditional ways of managing demand might not necessarily be the one that we need to use, and also the nature of water as a commodity is different from any other commodity that you see. Look, increase the price, then you will see that demand will be less and the like. So there are a number of caveats around water supply that we can't really run away from. It's a basic right for everyone. The government has got the responsibility to provide water. For some indigent kind of consumers, it's a matter of actually providing that freely or at a very low cost. So there are a lot of nuances that we need also to get right there. So firstly is that, look, over 1 billion people will be facing this water crisis globally. And when you look closer home, again, as of yesterday, we updated that 79 days are left to day 0. We have 89 days, and we're going down. So it's just like a matter of in less than 3 months, we will be not having water. A number of challenges, can be highlighted from that. Unsustainable lifestyles and poor planning, climate change, etc. So we then need to look at what can we do. And if you look at the picture there that was taken in Port St. John's a year ago, I just use this to illustrate that 70% of the earth is water and 30% is land. But then we have communities, even if you are in the margins of water, but you still struggle. There are a lot of also beliefs of people to say that how can we have water crisis, for example, in South Africa, with this extensive coastline that we have. There's water in the sea there. Why don't we use that water? The municipality is not serious. Why don't we just connect a pipe in there? So these are the attitudes then that affect people, in terms of how you use water, because in your mind, you think that water is just there, but the process of actually getting that water to be potable is something else, and sometimes not very much feasible. We can drill bores and the like, but whatever we do to provide water, it's very much costly. And again, colleagues from the geological perspective can tell you that when you drill many bores within a square kilometer, the land becomes very much unstable. When you start to have your tall buildings, it's likely also to compromise that, but I'm not going to get much into that. From an economic point of view, we often get examples of water compared to other commodities, including like diamond. When you talk about the value, the economic value of a product, And more often is just that water is that cheaper product. It should just cost less because its value in exchange is low. And the labor used to produce water is considered low, and also an additional unit of water that you consume is actually less valued, because when you are thirsty, you take the first glass, the second glass you don't really value it. It's very low value. So there's just that tradition, that general understanding that water is of low value. And we also have another challenge from the supply side, that there's vandalism and theft. We did recently a report for the Eastern Cape Water Crisis War Room, the in 2021-2022 report, where we also highlight the extensive nature of vandalism of water infrastructure that is also affecting even to supply the little water that is available. There's just a challenge. But remember, this is more on the infrastructure side. That you say municipalities can do something. It's the supply side of things. Build more dams, do something around the supply side so that you can supply water. But we need to realize that where the water is coming from is not really there because of a number of factors, like also your climate change. So financing its provision is just a major constraint. Also, water provision is a major constraint in many developing countries. And also, we therefore need better management of the little that we have. Even if we have, if there's any area in South Africa now that feels that they are safe in terms of water crisis, they just need also to manage demand. That is just the sustainable way of looking at things. So the number of, at a national level, there are a number of interventions that are being put in place, to diversify the sources of water, some public awareness, reduce wastage, and they have reuse, enforce payment, regulate and relocate water use, address over and illegal use of water. So all these efforts are being put, but again, it's not really taking away the danger and the crisis of water not being available. And the general argument is that, or a belief, or what I would want to put is that individuals want to save water, but as the saying goes, for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. If you ask, majority of people, they say, I want to use less water. But the challenge is that eventually you just don't use less water. How many of you are using 50 liters per day? Start to look at it. We did some survey that I'm just going to highlight something a little bit later on. How many times do you flush, a toilet? Some would say I flush 5 times. Then you say, do you know that if each flush is 5 liters, then that's already 25 liters that you have used, a day. So you're left with 25 for showering, for cooking, and for other aspects. Do you think that you really follow? So you want to, but it's just difficult. So I want to highlight some kind of thinking and some kind of examples in terms of how then, from a behavioral perspective, can we try to create some social norms and sustain them that would also help in terms of managing the use of water. So often question is that what you want to, or what you have to do or want to do. Do you do it that particular way? Plan everything, you end up actually sometimes doing it in a different way. Just like the picture that I have here on the right side, that to use or not to use the button when you want to cross the road. So you look at it to say, if I press the button, am I able to cross the road immediately? If I don't press it, if I delay in 2 minutes, is it going to overall delay, the chance for me to cross the road? So there's just often something that is happening in the human mind that I want to highlight. Then again, sometimes we have, just to take you away from the issues of water, our actions sometimes don't really show that we are moving towards a certain goal. If your goal is fitness, then you join the local gym and you want to be going to that gym because the goal is for fitness. You want to burn some calories. But as you go there are opportunities for you to burn the calories, like using the stairs. But then you see majority of people not using that opportunity. They're using the very easy way that actually, there's no opportunity to burn calories. So you ask then, are individuals rational? Most probably not. And that has really been, proved in a number of ways that the assumption of rationality does not really work. The same way that when municipality even increases the tariff for water, it doesn't really reduce the consumption of water. So those are some of the things that we need to think of a little bit. And again, we need to then understand human behavior and what really drives, that behavior. The whole thing is that the human mind is almost like 80-20%. 80% of what you do is based on unconscious thoughts. Then 20% is what you really very much slowly, deliberately, logically, you have to decide I want to do this. But the others are very much fast, instinctive, and emotional. So we need to be able to see how we can touch on that unconscious thoughts to sort of really bring in some logic. So it's a matter of improving this decision making of individual to be like very much logic and deliberative. So that means think about it. So it's not shouldn't just be as spontaneous as that. So many policies and interventions make the wrong assumption that individuals behave the same way. That assumption of rationality, and that is just the same across all communities. The homogeneity, but it's not really the case. So behavioral economics is coming in and close that particular gap of thinking to say that, yes, we assumed rationality before and say, you know what, if you increase price, for example, all individuals are going to demand less of that product or to use less of that particular product. But we see that, for example, it doesn't work. I just want to bring it a little bit to the idea of, sorry, my screen is just closing. I don't know if it's closed on your side. On the very top there's some kind of information that is closed, but I hope you can see the bulk of the content. So if we look at the saving water, the common actions is that we are in a water crisis. So we have the campaigns, danger is looming, day zero is coming, please, save water. These are the saving tips. The municipality can increase tariffs, ban certain activities, car wash, roof washing, anything that consumes a lot of water, attend to water leaks, smart metering, alternative sources of water, e.g. bore tanks. So all these are actions that are being taken. So it's education, punishment, and enforcement. From a rationality point of view, these, they really work because you assume that if you tell people to do this, they are going to do it. The reason they will do it. Like I said, people would want to do it, but they just forget to do it. So I'm going to highlight some kind of specific. You want to punish, but again, there are some concerns. So when you look at the right side here, I have possible challenges and limitations. I'm not the one to pay the bill. Think of, as a student, you are in the res, then you think, saving water, but I don't really pay the bill for water. That is the assumption, because you don't pay it directly. It doesn't come to your room and say, this is your bill for water for this month. No one can observe my water use. Yes, I'm in my room, I'm taking my shower. Who is monitoring me to see how much water did I use? The water bill is catered in my overall payment of res fees, tuition fees, my rental, my everything. Oh, I'm going to the mall. Anyway, it's all catered. I don't have to worry about that. So I just use water the way I want. Do I really get punished? So yeah, I know that I need to save water, and I'm just thinking that I have to save water. These are the ways of saving water. But if I don't, do I really get punished? Do others also save water? Yes, I'm doing this. I think you can agree with me that some of you, and I believe every one of you, have been saving water, have been actually following the tips. But one or the other, sometimes you feel that, look, but we still have the same message that water level consumption is very high. Why? So those are some of the things that comes into mind. So do these method strategies really work? Is it worth the effort? How much do I really save? Which one is the most conserving method? Authorities do not respond timely to it. So these are the issues that they don't really need that just education, punishment, enforcement approach. They really need an alternative way. in one of the, I don't know if you see at the top there, in one of the survey that we did, some people were saying that, the nature keeps its own balance. There is no way that we are going to run out of water. There is no way. Look, that is an assumption of someone. So someone says that it's a weird phenomenon. I don't believe there should be a day zero. And the burden of responsibility is being placed on the shoulders of those who are impacted the most. So again, we are being told to save water, but again, those who did not plan and whatnot, the political discourse that we, was talking about is actually also maybe the underlying factor here. Yes, so these are different aspects that often come into play. So sometimes we have some solutions to match these kind of problems that I highlight. I can pay the bill. I'm not the one to pay the bill. So you have so money is not an issue, or to household actually calculate how much they are spending compared to other goods. So sometimes as a household, you say, no, money is not an issue. I can always pay. But when that amount is actually reflected, how much more you could have saved, now you put it in monetary terms, then someone start to realize, right, my Friday tax money for my child at school could actually be coming from saving water. It start to ring a bell to say, oh yeah, but the money is very much important. Then you think of the foregone sacrifices. Just think of it. If let's say as a university, you're sending so much thousands of rands on water bill. Now, if it wasn't going towards that, it could mean then more other facilities for students, more other support for students. So there's always a foregone sacrifice that sometimes we don't take into account so much immediately. So there are a number of these nuances that we can always talk about. Compare own consumption to that of others, because you want to know, do others really save water? So in one residence, if they are really doing well to save water, how are we doing as a resident to save water? If my neighbor at the house is actually, having certain consumption, if I know the average consumption within my community, how does it compare to mine? Oh, others are saving water, so I should be a bit ashamed that I'm the one that is making it difficult to reach the goals. So these are very much interesting aspects that we often see. So I'm going just to be skipping some of this, but anyway, you get also the slides so that we can get to have a chance to maybe discuss. So with the behavioral response to the water crisis, there are biases that we need to control or to correct. One is like, the status quo bias. Look, I just have to consume what it's not worth it. I just have to continue on the path that I am. And the attitude behavior, gap, the cognitive dissonance. So that is also a major challenge. The framing effects, how the choices are presented to us, and that are they in a way that enables us to make decision. Let me just, pick to the example that I'm going to show you. What we did is that being told to save water, there are posts that you see at the entrance of the residence, is different from seeing a sticker on the tap that is saying use a water glass or a tablet to brush your teeth. Don't. So there it's a way you are taking the action, you're getting reminded. So it comes to your mind, oh no, I need to do this. But you might have forgotten that there's a poster. If it was just on the poster on the entrance of the residence, you can easily forget that. So, but in this case now, you are reminded there. But also, how is it framed? So it's framed as a threat. Someone will say, but am I going really to be identified? Am I really going to be caught? It's also how we put the words. So it's not, communication is one thing, but also how to communicate becomes very much critical. So problematic features of the water market, the salience of the water meters is a source of key information. So you see, users without individual meter cannot track their consumption. Do those with individual meter even track it? So if you have your meter, do you really track your water consumption daily, or what is the amount of the bill this month? You pay. You don't even look, did you consume more or whatever? Maybe when the amount is so big, then the difference, then you start to check why. But otherwise, that's okay, I just pay. Feedback via bills is infrequent and lack detail. So sometimes, you see your bill, but you don't even understand how your consumption compares to your neighbor, compared to the rest of the community. So hence, then different interventions have come into play, social norms and comparisons, reward and praise benefit, where, for example, on your bill, you realize that, oh no, you are consuming below the average, below the benchmark that is set by the municipality. You're doing well. So there's that kind of reinforcement of the good behavior. You're doing well. Continue to that, on that particular path. In a way, you start to realize, yeah, the municipality understands who is saving more. The month that you did not consume below that, you actually, please, it gives you just a message warning to say, look, you have consumed above this. Please correct this so that you consume within what. So you know that at least there is some knowledge. So there's a lot of data that the municipalities are sitting on, but I don't want to actually use the data to inform their communication and everyday kind of use of data. We interacted with many municipalities, and it's often that the engineering directorate and the billing and accounts directorate, they're not sharing the information. And even the communications department struggle to get information from the engineers as they fix the leaks or from the other units. So we cannot be able to solve this if the data that is generated on daily activities by the municipality cannot be used to communicate and be able to bring change here. So this is the message that you always talk to the municipality, and there's always like an issue of, no, there's one reason or the other why that is not possible. But again, big data is being generated every now and then, and it needs to be used. They're sitting on administrative data that can actually be very much informative. Feedback mechanism that has been used, for example, in shower meter in France, resulted in 23% water saving and energy saving. I think a colleague talked about, some sustainability ways, some sprinklers that would help to save water and the like. So these are some of the mechanisms that have been put, and water saving has been really realized. But one thing what we need also to know is that, an individual is in society, and in society, a number of things have got, they've got some kind of representation or symbolism. So how does water use choice affect identity symbolism? So for example, if you say, look, place a brick in your toilet water tank, if it connotes low status, sometimes someone doesn't do it because it connects low status. And also it's a question of others doing it. So you always want to see how others are also doing it in society, which again, sometimes from the traditional economic point of view, we don't really maybe consider such kind of difference, because the assumption is that you are taught to do this, you can possibly do it. Some quick examples now. In Costa Rica, they did some neighborhood level social norms, some social norm sticker on water bills. Water consumption reduction was between 3.7 to 5.6%. So you are compared to your neighbors, how your neighbors are saving water, you are encouraged to save. So average for that community is computed as they do the billing. They just compute to say, oh, Summerstrand, this is the average consumption of households, all households in Summerstrand. Then include it in my bill, compare now with my bill, my own consumption. So I'm able to see how am I compared to the rest of the majority. In general, individuals want to be part of the majority, they don't want to be an outlier. So that helped to reduce water consumption by 3 to 5.66%. City level consumption by just like in Nelson Mandela in Quebec, this is the average consumption, this is yours. In Berlin, Costa Rica, it was not effective, but more localized. You say these are people of, we are of the same class and whatnot. So it makes sense rather than just being compared by everyone. So that is the kind of things that pieces of information that need now to inform a decision. Goal setting and plan making, actually to say, look, this is your current consumption. Can you set targets? How are you moving towards that particular target? Actually helped to reduce water by 3 to 5%. But some observations actually showed some, subpopulation, behavior differences. So low consumer responds more to the goal setting and plan making. High consumers respond more of neighborhood social norms. So do we really get to understand this? And our authorities also thinking that. One thing that is of interest is this: in Bogota, Colombia, the campaigns to reduce water consumption give an impending danger of 70% of the city going without water. There was an increase. They're doing campaigns to say reduce water consumption. There was actually an increase in water use just after the campaigns or during those campaigns. The same was confirmed also by Nelson Mandela Municipality in December when we had a meeting, when we were talking about this, when we were presenting this. Yeah, but that is what we observe, that the water overall consumption is not going down. But the amount of money that we're spending on the campaigns is also too much compared to what is happening. So what has been observed in Bogota is that users are not convinced that they can help solve the situation. No, the problem is beyond my control. Therefore, I should not worry. I should just, go on that default option that we talked about. I'm not so sure where to start saving water. Are the suggestions realistic? Do they conform to my social status? We talked about, the symbolism earlier on. So, but then they changed then the interventions to include the behavioral informed, so behavioral insights then were included. For example, change of physical environment, where to place the information. So information about saving water was then placed on water taps. Reward and punishment schemes was done also publicly, and info provision, that was very much standard as in the campaign, but water saving really overall improved and was reduced by 13.8%. So you start to see that just the campaigns did not help the situation, made even maybe worse, because an increase in water use was observed because of what is the reasoning around that. It's just a human behavior that comes into effect. So even in Western Cape, the water crisis that we know of, again, nudges have been really used and applied to reduce or to encourage people to reduce water consumption. And the benefit of the nudges is that it's actually your individuals to make their decision, and actually you are able to influence the bigger and bigger groups of people to do the right thing that you want. So almost everyone now, the behavior is being channeled towards the right cause where you want through nudges. So that has been becoming very much popular. And when we look at some of the aspects that we're working on as well, is to look at that. Look, information overload is just a problem, because if I tell you that, look, in one poster you have, okay, how to save water in this, yes, it's quite easier when you when you are also looking at the budget. But again, the relevance of the information, where you see the information and at the point of action, there's just often sometimes some disconnection that I talked about earlier on. We tell you that, okay, only run full loads in the washing machine and dishwasher, but this poster maybe is at the entrance of the building or is there in the city there. But now when I am actually in the residence, or where I am, in the flat that I am in, and I don't really see that sticker. So even if when I see it, I say, yo, I want to do this. But when I'm actually utilizing water now, I don't know about, I've forgotten about it. Not that I don't want to save water, but it's just that, it's human nature. You tend to forget. So the simple things of saying, remove the, include stickers at the point of action. So at some point we did some intervention, and you realize that, just after that intervention, there's some kind of downward trend in water consumption that we are monitoring very closely where it will go, because we look at this and say, like, start to change where the information is, put stickers on the water tap behind the door of the bathroom. So, to say, did you close the tap? You don't have to put it at the entrance of the residence, but maybe put it closer there. So let's get to know where the information is, where action is taking place. Inform individuals there and there. That is what behavior, the nudges tell you, that you need to push people to do the right thing at the point of action. We have a triangle here so that we don't get too confused. There's something else that was happening in that particular point in time that is not really part of our study, but that actually led to this decision. But I'm not going to talk more about it. So we saw that, within the month of May, don't be surprised by the May and May, the two of them, but because intervention took place, at the mid-May, that is where the intervention took place on the 19th of May. So you start to see that we have split of what May. So the consumption per capita, average over those particular days actually started to show the decline. And that is what only changed was to have, change posters, stickers to stickers and put them on the point of action, and also trying to ask people to calculate their daily consumption of water. So people started to realize that no, 5 liters, 5 flushes in a day of toilet is actually 25 liters. I'm halfway through. So those are some of the things that get to make. So just in summary, what all I was talking about and what I'm highlighting here is exactly depicted here. So how economic actors make choice is what is best. Choice depends on what information is available. That is why the posters and the way they are placed is crucial. What are the skills available to search and process the information? How much time is available to search and process the information? That billing that I say compare with the previous consumption of the same household or in the community and etc. Those are very much crucial pieces of information. How does the choice and outcome compare with those of others around me? What implication do my choice have for future choices? So that is just, the summary of this. There's something in it about human beings that needs to be ignited in a systematic way to help achieve optimal decision making. So overall, interventions to analyze, to collect, to have administrative data, real data, get to understand what is the problem, summarize that particular data, communicate that data with package it for communication with the users of water, know your targets very well, and then just influence the choices, based on admin data, survey, educate people, use of role models and the like, then monitor and evaluate and scale up. So that is the process that, we are following currently, as you see those results that I've just shared with you, is a way of, ensuring that those social norms are created and are sustained. So basically, we need to be able to, we are working on the assumptions of reinforcement, the fundamental motives, and the decision triggers. So we want to reinforce what is good. The good behaviors needs to be reinforced. When we also know that human beings always care for the next person and care for the future, but we need to ignite that, in the messaging as we frame our messages. And we need then the decision triggers, like, for example, putting the sticker where it matters most. So that's how to help an individual to make the right decision. And just to look at it globally, different institutions have started to also use behavioral insights in their work to guide their work in everything that they do, because individuals are not rational generally, and there's no homogeneity across society. So societies don't really respond to policies or to actions in the same way. You need to get to understand what is happening in each sector. Within South Africa, it is only the Western Cape province that have got a behavioral insights unit. So that has actually informed and driven majority of the campaigns around avoiding day zero. They were very much behind that. So they take cognizance of the power of behavioral insights, and it's a trend in many governments around the world. They're actually having behavioral insights units. So it's high time that also other municipalities start to think about that, other institutions start to think of that, government at national level start to think about that. And that actually helps to get to understand and for policies to be more effective. So it's no longer just one way that we tell people to jump, they just going to ask how high and jump in that way. That is not how things are. Someone is going to jump, someone is not going to jump, someone is going to walk instead of jumping. So that is just the nature of people. But then you can actually, harness all that. And that is actually very much the bottom issue. So educating people often does not change their attitudes or behaviors. We might be more successful by just targeting the behavior without worrying about what people believe. So generally, you can't go wrong by harnessing the power of human nature, where behavioral insights actually come through. So that is my presentation, and you're welcome to also engage, and I'll also share the material with you. So we're looking very much in terms of behavioral and experimental economics, and a lot of other equipment that are coming, so that we are able to also bring in neuroeconomics in that. And as we measure the brain activity, as we measure the skin conduct and all that, so that we are able to actually get to understand more about the behaviors. Thank you so much, David and team.
Thank you so much, Prof. That was very insightful. I think everyone is very excited about the presentation from both Doc and also Prof in this sort of like critical area. I would just go straight to the questions right now. So I think I'll just go to the question box. I think the first question that I would like to ask, actually coming from Prof's presentation about the issue, I think that's mostly centered towards Dr. Mahed, at the issue of using seawater. So how do you think that there is some progress in the technology with regards to desalination? I think they call it desalination.
Yeah, desalination.
Yeah. So what is your perspective here?
There's a lot of work being done on desalination, right? You have to understand, firstly, from a perspective, from a technical perspective. Number one, desalination as a technology consumes, firstly, a lot of energy because you're pumping water through a membrane in the opposite direction of the natural gradient. So you're forcing it through. So you need energy, number one. Number two, the membranes, the filters, the membranes, and the systems themselves get clogged up and need long-term maintenance. Number three, the end product, which is a highly concentrated salt, which you produce, also known as a brine, is problematic in terms of disposal. Now, there's been technology around that people are now talking about using and that kind of thing. But fundamentally, in the long term, it's not necessarily one of the better solutions. We're having this discussion here, and I've had this argument with a lot of other scientists and that kind of thing. And we have to think about this. There's no silver bullet, you know. We need to use multiple technologies or resources in conjunction with one another. That's really it in essence.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much in that case with regards to Doc. I think on the spirit of the same questions, I'll just hand over to Prof to maybe take us into whether there could be financial resources for such technologies, or whether it would be a waste of time to do so. I always think that it's always crazy that sometimes scientists always complain that the economists and the finance people, they're not giving us the grant or the money for the research. So I think that it's not a fight, but yeah, I'll hand over to Prof.
Look, the bottom line is that we are in a crisis, and the crisis is not very localized. Like I say that, by 2025, 1 billion on the earth would be having water challenges. And it's either we act now or we don't act. So if we don't act now, what is our basis? Is that maybe there's just going to be more rainfall, and then there's going to be less, because the population is growing anyway. It's not being less and less. So the whole idea is just that, how to then finance that if it needs to be, because if that is the solution, then how is it going to be financed? It's not a matter of whether we need to finance it or not, but how to finance it. That, to me, that is the question, to say, how then do we finance? There are different alternatives of definitely water, but like I indicated, my understanding is that like many also are using like groundwater and whatnot. But and my colleague maybe would really help me there, that is it really sustainable to have boreholes across every square meter? Definitely it's not sustainable. The ground becomes very much, so there's a certain level to an extent to where you can actually draw from that water underground, and with maintaining the ground stability in a better way. But then if we have the sea, we want to utilize that water. If it's cost effective in some way, let's see how to finance it in a better way. Yeah.
I think just to segue off, Dr. Mahed on the groundwater.
No problem. So Professor raises a valid point there. Overconsumption of groundwater is a big problem, right? And we're seeing now, we're busy doing research in this area, and we're finding now that more and more wells are salting up. Now that could be due to overpumping, or it could be due to the salt water moving into the fresh water underneath the ground because the seawater is present there. Right now, here's an interesting question here where Rebecca asks about, can the municipality embark on projects to enable water supply? So there's one idea that we're working on in conjunction with the university and sustainability engineer Andre Heerfus, whereby we develop multiple borehole points for abstraction and a few borehole points for injection. And you recycle wastewater, or you recycle some sort of potable form of water, and you inject that into the ground. So what this does is it allows you a sustainable long-term supply, because you're really actually injecting water into the aquifer that can be pumped out at a later stage. It fights back the salt water, which is obviously now encroaching here. It keeps the pore pressure, which Professor alluded to about buildings sinking and that kind of thing. So the pressure from the water keeps the sand above, or whatever structures above, in place, so that the overburden pressure doesn't basically cause slumping. And it also allows us a way to sort of clean up some of the water that's coming through the system. So there's like I said before, there needs to be a multi-pronged approach. There is no silver bullet. You know, a bit of surface water, a bit of groundwater capturing. But I think in the long term, we're going to see, and we're seeing it already happening, some sort of decentralization of water supply, whereby people are kind of like they're doing the electricity, going off grid, you know, and supplying for themselves and kind of managing their own, you know, water systems in their households or communities on a smaller scale.
Very insightful, Doc. I think I'm just going to go to the question from Sipemini. This was very long, but I'm just going to sort of like take out the main aspect of it. I think this is more directed to Prof. So Sipemini says that, so to me, the question is whether there is appropriate incentives and sanctions that could induce or reward behavioral change. And I think they also go into the question of let's say the political economy questions, whereby there is so much inequality, and then now what is happening is that maybe certain areas which face socioeconomic issues already do not have enough supply of water, so now they also have to reduce their own consumption. So how do we work around those complicated issues in terms of consumption reduction?
Thank you. Let me start with the one for the political question, the inequality one. So if in the past I was not having access to water to bath, when I get water today, I don't have to bath 10 times to cover up for anything. It's not going to help me. So I still just need to use water the way that I need to use it. Yes, I didn't have in the past. It's unfortunate. Yes, it's not good. But when I got it now, I don't have to overuse it to catch up on anything. I missed that opportunity to use water. So yes, let's deal with that. What is there? I think that also came from the other survey where saying this problem is weighing heavily on those that least contributed to it. Those that were not maybe even having access to water, they're feeling it's much heavier to actually conserve water now. So it's like the burden is more on them. The same thing can be said on anything on climate change and whatnot, that look, developing countries are forced to abandon, fossil fuels and the like by those countries that have actually developed utilizing the same, and now the burden is being placed there. But again, the idea comes that we need a solution, one way or the other. And the idea is to say, let's use water conservatively. So in a way that would actually be sustainable. Then the issue of incentive and sanctions, let me just give an example of, vaccination. People didn't want to vaccinate, and there were a lot of talk that should we incentivize, give people money and whatnot. We need to understand that incentive is not only about money. So the incentive, for example, is to acknowledge someone that, you're doing well in your bill that, look, we saw that you are actually maintaining your water consumption within the range. Thank you so much. That is an acknowledgement, that is an incentive in its own, but it's not monetary, but it's actually a way of what? Incentivizing. Then also sanctioning, it comes in very much different ways. One, yes, from the monetary point of view, there can be like punishment in terms of the higher tariff that you need to pay. There can be an issue of blocking of your water meter, because if you use excessive, the rules say that the municipality can now come and limit your water meter to only 500 liters per day, which is not maybe possibly enough for many. So that also is really one of the punishment. But there's also social punishment, that comes in terms of, how then other community members really relate to you as they see you irrigating your lawn, and yet we are in a water crisis. How does the community actually, start to deassociate themselves from you? It's actually a social punishment. So there are different mechanisms to punish, but just a matter of, it has to be reasonable, because one thing that, let's say in a race, give an example, in a race, a student will think that, am I going to be observed that I use so much water, and are you going to punish me? And how are you going to punish me? That is difficult. So you can't put a threat and want to punish, yet you don't have the means to observe individual behavior. But in terms of households, it's totally different. In Western Cape, they use the drones to actually start to observe, people filling up water in swimming pools and whatnot, and they would put dots, their house. So on a map, they created a map that put a red dot to say this household and the water consumption is actually higher. So anyone can go in that community to look where there are the red dots to see that my neighbor is actually consuming way more than the other. But it just pushes, it's a social pressure that comes to be, which is like sort of a punishment. So there are different mechanisms that can come to the fore in terms of trying to resolve this.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think I'll ask the two be sort of like the last question from the chat box. I think okay. I'll just go to Lucas Lally, and then maybe I'll come back to Karen. Karen, if you want to ask the question, you can ask it after Lucas, if you don't mind. So I think this is more for Dr. Mahed. Lucas Lally asked, would the technology of manipulation manipulating the weather, I think this is weather manipulation or climate, what do they call it, climate engineering, I think it's banned if I'm right, to increase rain in the bay not be a good investment. What do you think?
Yeah, David, so that's an interesting one. Thanks for that one, Lucas. So in parts of the Middle East and West Africa, they've been doing this rain harvesting, not rainwater harvesting. So what they do is, in actual fact, they shoot up certain chemicals into the clouds to make it a bit heavier, and then that obviously now drops or forces the cloud to burst. But with that comes a whole bunch of other impacts that one has to begin to understand. Number one, I was at Potchefstroom, Northwestern University, many years ago, when we had colleagues that worked on a project of this nature in Abu Dhabi and parts of the Middle East. And in the long term, you start seeing those chemicals ending up in surface water and rain and groundwater, and that has a direct impact on health because it's certain heavy metals that they use. So manipulating weather is one way of doing it, but judicious, like our colleague Prof Mishi said, judicious, long-term, sustainable use of our water resources is actually the only way that we can really get out of problems of this nature.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Mahed, with regards to that. So I think I'm going to go to look, let me just take the three final questions with Karen Lovu. Karen, do you want to ask your question on audio, or should I read it out? Okay, I will just read it out. So Karen says, based on the first question,
I don't mind asking.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was just moving in a private environment. So the question that I had was, so I did join a bit later. Maybe I might have missed the greater bulk of the presentation. But in terms of consumer behavior, we've sort of seen what comes in respect of consumers, and seeing how when certain implementations are put in place, that's how they react to those implementations. But is there perhaps any research in terms of the government to see how does government respond when these shortages come into play, in such a way that we can perhaps match consumer behavior with government behavior to find some sort of common ground, so that whatever implementations that are brought in by the government sort of caters to the different classes of society? Because I think with what Professor Mishi was saying, it sometimes seems as if a lot of the changes that need to take place is put on the consumers instead of the government, which can be quite detrimental to the whole point of the democracy, if that makes sense.
Prof, you want to take that?
Okay, thank you. So the bottom line is that, like I indicated, that at the moment, government is not really utilizing, the much of the information at hand. So they are not really utilizing the data that they gather that would actually allow an understanding of who is using water, how that water is being utilized, what is the behavior of individuals when it comes to water. So they are not analyzing that data. That is especially, at least for Eastern Cape, because we have spoken to the municipalities, so it's one way or the other. It's just not happening. Then also, what to do when they get, wherever they get to look at the data, what to do with it, how then to sort of, communicate that, or to push the consumers in a certain direction, or to inform them. That is also another critical question. Because, for example, there are certain users that are way beyond the limit, completely way beyond the limit that they can pick in the system. But now, what to do with them is another unit has to be doing. Another directorate has to take it up and do the next thing. But the other director does not do it. So in a way, the government, how it works is that, that one directorate or one division has got its own competence. The next has got its own competence. So it requires that there's that clear communication, and one takes up from the other and the next. But that is not happening. So it all breaks down. So I can confirm to you that that is not really happening. And yesterday we were with Saugam. No, a day before yesterday, we were with a meeting with Saugam. And we're actually talking around these particular matters of water, use, water consumption, and strategies, lessons from Western Cape. And the idea is that, look, sometimes when you talk about Western Cape, then people say, it becomes a political issue to say, look, why do you want to look at Western Cape? Everything is good, but what is happening there good can also be learned in other areas. So the idea to bring behavioral, insights unit and within the Western Cape government was actually to try to monitor human behavior. And they are using it in different spheres of government. So before they implement any policy, they're trying to actually get an understanding of human behavior, so that they are policy making, and any adjustment that is happening to policy actually also resonates with the behavior, or they can actually come up with a mechanism to communicate in a way to push behavior towards some kind of desired kind of outcomes. So that is what is lacking, and that is what I'm trying to call for, to say that needs to be to be much present.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah, thanks for that, Prof. And Prof covers a lot there, colleagues, and from a practical perspective on the ground, in terms of aspects related to consumption, let's just take a step back, right, and look at this holistically, right? If you look at it from a perspective of, and the colleagues are speaking about household consumption now. Household consumption accounts for anywhere between 7, maybe 10, if you're lucky, 12 to 15% of total consumption. Maximum, that's the maximum region in most places. Your largest consumer is actually agriculture. which is in the region of about 60, 65, sometimes up to 70% of total consumption. Of that 70%, sometimes 50%, which means 30% of the total available water is lost to evaporation. So let's just have colleagues wrap their head around that quickly for a second, because as much as municipalities and government and all these guys are pushing for reduction in household consumption, reduction in, there's also, let's say hypothetically even, there's 20% of total available water being pumped through systems, or the reticulation system for that matter. 30 to 50% of that is lost by means of leaks, right? So these kind of, so you've lost 40, like somewhere close to 40% of the total available water to evaporation and leaks alone, right? So this is where, and Sharon Tessendorf raises a question here, our infrastructure, our aging infrastructure needs to come into play in terms of we need to maintain, we need to upgrade, we need to fix, we need to constantly, and it's a constant battle. It's not a once-off whereby, and City of Cape Town, I was on another interview similar to this nature with another radio station in Cape Town, and we had the former mayor of Cape Town and one of the professors from civil engineering at UCT talk about it. And City of Cape Town tries to push to have kilometers of their pipelines upgraded per year. So by the time they're done upgrading the entire system, they literally have to start again. So this is the kind of work or effort that's required, and it's not a once-off. It's no silver bullet. You know, it's not a fly-by-night. It's a consistent. You know, you have to tug at it consistently and work at it all the time.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you want to say something? Oh.
Yeah, I wanted to say also, you know, in terms of even you know, in infrastructure, there's like we looked at the 13 you know, water authorities in Eastern Cape and how much they are losing in terms of theft and vandalism. This is also a behavioral issue. It's happening within our communities, and you would see that every month the municipalities are losing almost 13 million, you know, to vandalism and theft. And that needs replacement. The replacement value is just too much because there's a lot of other costs that are incurred besides just the accounting cost. The economic cost is just too much as well. So those are some of the things that, yes, municipalities, they need to really also like do much. Well, that it's also a behavioral issue. It's also a planning issue. It's also you know, an issue of competence that needs to be looked at. So we don't have to really run away also in terms of competence when hiring and whatnot. So those are some of the things that need to be looked at so that proper planning is happening. And also really, you know, in terms of planning also, it's budgeting. We know that the fiscus is just getting smaller and smaller, but there are some other things that you can't really, you know, afford to ignore in any single year. I think Dr. Red is talking about, you know, what the Western Cape government is doing. So the moment you think that you have expanded, you have to go over again and continue to expand. So it's a continual thing. It's not a once-off that we've invested in infrastructure. So now we are going to lie low for 10 years and come back, and everything else is going to be what? To be down. And to really replace that now is going to be too much. There's been like plans to have you know, another dam within the catchment area. But I think those plans have been just being what? Stayed off to the next financial year, until now we're hoping that if that dam maybe was there, we could be having maybe a bit of more water than what we are having now. So once you delay by a day, then again, the problem is just compounding one after the other.
Thank you so much, Prof and Doc. I think I would just close. I don't know if you both have any closing remarks, and then I'll hand off to Rebecca to do the vote of thanks and the closing.
Thanks for that, David. I just wanted to latch on to what the Prof was talking now about, you know, the future and other dams. Just for interest's sake, for whoever's like, you know, looking into those kind of things, there's something called the Umzimvumbu project. the Umsemvubu project's been projected to cost approximately 14 billion rand. That's just a ballpark figure. It's been coming on for quite some time. And the Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation, they're busy slowly working on it. And, you know, they'll build a road this year, they'll build a small pump station next year, etc. So slowly but surely, obviously. But I mean, in terms of, if we look at it from the perspective of, like we say, that the whole thing of, you know, the demand versus the supply and location, and, you know, this last question here, that's the one I want to touch on from the perspective of where Bandile and Gidi, he looks at this and he asks the question around, you know, climate change and water crises, and this is the new normal. Let's just make that the reality quickly, because if we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're able to diversify our water resources, you know, plan properly, maintain adequately, this is what we're going to be sitting in, whether it's now, whether it's in 10 years time, whether it's the drought after that. We really need to think about this, you know, holistically and long-term solution, and not just the technical things, the kind of stuff that Prof. Mishi is looking at in terms of behavioral aspects, you know, helping people and managing our resources better, and, you know, integrating these resources from various sources and trying to understand how do we, you know, use it more efficiently. All these things is as a big picture, from a big picture thinking perspective, needs to be examined more closely, not just by government, but also by individuals and NGOs and other societies, and everybody really working on water as a problem. Because the thing is, you can't solve a problem with the same kind of thinking you created when you started. And I think Einstein alluded to that, you know, and that's very important. That's the kind of things we need to be, you know, looking at, you know, and it comes from the perspective of, you know, the economics and the finance and the engineering and the technical and the science and the social and everything all thrown into one pot to come up with a holistic solution. And I think that's where we need to move towards, and having these kind of discussions, you know, with scientists and engineers and economists and social scientists all in the same room. That's the start of finding a proper solution.
All right. Yes, exactly. I totally agree. And really, the solution is among us. Is not sitting in government. Is not sitting elsewhere. The solution is really, you know, among and between us as individuals, and that is very much the starting point. And also the idea is that we need also to ensure that the platforms like this, also those that have got the authority to act, are also able to get to know the ideas. And that is one way that, you know, as for example, in academic institutions, as researchers and the like, we need to be able to ensure that our ideas, they also permeate into the into government, into the policy making space. And those lobbyists can also pick up any of these recommendations and run away with them, so that we are not working in silos, that one is critiquing the other, thinking that they are smarter, then the other group is also critiquing. So we always, you know, point fingers, and then the solution is not there. And also, again, you know, the overall idea is that we can't wish away this problem. This problem is here to stay, even if there is like more rainfall. But again, the issue of, just like I say, that it costs money to just, you know, process water and provide water, because the population is increasing. There are a lot of dynamics at here. There are a lot of other demands also that really require the financial resources. So one way or the other is going to cost money. But if we fail to plan and take that into account, we just, like, you know, really, you know, are planning to fail this money as well. And so we continue to be in these particular challenges. So there is need to recognize that, look, the problem is with us, but how can we then live, you know, in a sustainable way with this particular, you know, this particular problem? So how we just reduce the impact of the problem, and how those actions that we're taking, they also need not to compromise the future. because there's a future. We might want to have all water, like we say, drill bore every other corner of of the block, and let's have water now. Let's not have problems there, but we are creating another problem for the future. So we need then to have that balance. That is why I think colleague Dr. Mahed actually say that it requires the engineers, the psychologists, the sociologists, the economists, the accountants, the politicians around the table. Let's really talk about these things. Hear my perspective, but I also allow you to say your perspective on that matter, so that we have a common solution, so that that hype, hear my perspective, becomes quite a reality.
Thank you so much, Prof and Dr. Mahed. We're very thankful to have you both. I'm just going to hand off to Rebecca to give vote of thanks and close off. Rebecca.
Hello, thank you so much, Prof. Mishi. Thank you, Dr. Mahed. This was a very informative session, and I know we all as the attendants, we have been able to benefit from one thing or the other. We've been able to obtain a lot of information. It was very insightful. Thank you so much. And also, I would also like to thank all our attendants, those that contributed, that asked questions. Thank you all so much for making this session very, very much interactive. I would also like to thank the IEJ for them also assisting in the planning of this event. And thank you all once again. We'll have this recording in our social media platforms, YouTube, it will be there. And we have other, like we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and you can connect with us through the one of those platforms. And we're also on YouTube. So it's Rethinking Economics for Africa, Nelson Mandela University, in all our different platforms. So thank you all once again. You can also, sorry about that, you can also, if you want to join our society, we have forms available. You can communicate with one of us, one of the execs, and then we'll be able to give you the forms. Thank you all so much. Once again, thank you, Prof. Mishi. Thank you, Dr. Mahed. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us, and thanks to the colleagues, and thank you, Prof. Mishi, and I hope you guys have a lovely weekend. Cheers.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much, Doc, for that as well, and yeah, for the team for putting this together. Have a great weekend all.